end. Welcome everybody. We are here for Dirty and Divine today with Alice Grist. And a little fact that you guys might not be aware of is that Alice was actually my first publisher. And then she came to me with her book. So, and the way I met her was she sent one of her books to me to review for Juno. So we've had a backwards and forwards relationships in all different sorts of positions in editing and publishing and reviewing each other's work. So we go back a long way, but we have never actually met in real life. But it's lovely to see her again. Alice, if you would like to introduce yourself, because I'm sure my bio that I've got for you is very out of date at this stage. So.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you for having me and for everyone for being here. I've been really excited to do this since you asked me, so it's a pleasure. So me in general, I am, oh gosh, where do I start? It goes back such a way now. I started writing probably 12 years or so ago about spirituality, and started off with my high heel guides to enlightenment and spiritual living. It's all kind of spiritual exploration, which led to then a book about my first pregnancy and onwards to doing some publishing with John Hunt Publishing, which is how I met Lucy, which, well, one of the ways I met Lucy, as she explains, kind of round and about. But then, yeah, then I wrote or started to write Dirty and Divine, which I then proposed to Womancraft, and she kindly took me on. And that was the beginning of my sort of writing about tarot specifically. I've been reading tarot since I was about 13, and we'll probably get into that with the questions later. But yeah, so I went on to do Dirty and Divine, and I've had other tarot books, the Book of Tarot. I designed the Cosmic Mother Tarot, which I hand painted with my daughter when she was 4 in this kitchen, and then most recently Rebel Heart Tarot. So I've been kind of tarot focused for the last 10 years or so, and it was kind of Lucy and a few other people who channeled me that way. So thank you.
Well, you are just such a wealth of information on it. And I've dabbled in tarot myself since I was probably kind of mid-teens. And my mum, who was actually on this call, she got me my first tarot deck, proper one, the Cat People Tarot, which I still have and love very much. But I don't know about the rest of you here, but I have 2 stacks of boxes of cards, tarot cards, divination cards, inspiration cards. And that's my weeded down number of decks. Like, it's insane. And I kind of, this wasn't where I was going to start at all, but I just kind of thought, whilst you were talking, just how drawn so many of us are to the actual artwork of cards as well as their meaning. But for me, it's just such a lovely way to have a pack of an artist who I really love's work right there to hand, and just to inspire, and meanings of tarot aside, just to really revel in the artwork of tarot. So I think it's really exciting that you created 2 tarot packs yourself. What led to that?
Okay, so the first deck was the one that I painted with my daughter, and that was around the time I think I finished doing Dirty and Divine, and I just needed a creative project. I also had a 4-year-old who was like high needs and needed me to entertain her. So I just literally said, I know, seems ridiculous now, shall we paint a tarot deck together? Thinking we'd probably do 5 or 6 or 10 cards max, but she's focused, and she sat and we painted this whole deck, and she did her version and I did mine, and we just sat in this room. I had a baby at the time, a young baby who was like one of those miracle babies who just sleeps all night and all day. And so she just sat with us, and it was just really gorgeous. So that's how that deck was conceived. I self-published that, and I've not got any at the moment, unfortunately, for sale, because self-publishing is quite challenging with young families and stuff like that. But then the Rebel Heart Tarot came about due to finally agreeing to collaborate with someone, and actually that being one of the most incredible experiences of my working career yet. So
Do you want to tell us a bit more about that? Because seeing the people we've got here and knowing a little bit about some of them, I'm aware that there's probably a few people who might have a secret wish to create an oracle deck or a tarot deck of their own, and maybe would like a little bit of practical guidance, hints and tips about kind of the do's and don'ts of what works, what doesn't when you're creating your own deck.
Okay, oh gosh, right. Well, it helps to have someone else do the artwork, I'll tell you that. Unless you're an artist yourself. I mean, the deck I painted myself was never meant for publication, so there was no pressure on me at all. It was just exploring that creativity with the child and doing it in a way that wasn't threatening, because tarot can sometimes feel a little bit dark. So that was, having written Dirty and Divine, which can get quite dark, it was really nice to explore this light inner child side of tarot with all my favorite pastel colors and things like that. And I think if you are going to design a deck of your own, whether it's tarot or something else, you have to be really passionate about what you're learning for yourself as you do it, because it's not a case of just objectively creating an image that looks like something. I feel like when you do this, you imbue yourself with every single
Sorry, 1 second. Cindy, would you mind muting yourself, please? Thank you.
Yeah, you like imbue yourself with every single card, and it becomes a bit of an experience. So for example, with having created Rebel Heart over the past year, and then them cards coming out, it's a bit like living through Dirty and Divine again. It's a bit like living through every single tarot card, and each time you do that, it gets intense because you're exploring all these huge themes of life, and they come up within your day-to-day. So if you do decide to create a deck, maybe really think about whether you're in a good mental state, whether you feel safe, whether you have stuff that you want to explore, and bring that to the artwork and the writing. And then afterwards, take some serious time off. And then, also there's like oracle decks. I'm sort of working on a bit of an oracle deck at the minute. And compared to tarot, it feels so light and fluffy. It feels like a big universal hug. And that feels like the exact right thing to do after having created work with tarot.
That's really interesting. I'd like to read a little bit from your book to kind of get us into the swing of Dirty and Divine, and then I've got lots more questions for you.
Yes, you do.
Okay. The tarot offers a redemptive opportunity to any woman looking for her real archetypal self. Herein we have 78 cards, all of which represent some small part of you. Some of the cards are sinful. Some of the cards are powerful. Some of them show strength. Others orbit around your weakness. In their totality, we have a spectrum of humanity, all of which abide within you. Importantly, not one of those cards is a whore or a housewife. Yes, there are maidens and mothers, but these images speak to the glorious undefined depths of those roles. Understanding this, knowing tarot, is not a textbook exercise. It is an adventure, a vision quest in reclaiming your humanity, your femininity, in all its lucid and colourful depths. It is raising a middle finger to the prison of patriarchy and deciding to look inward for your vast, echoing spirit. In the modern dearth of real feminine depth, the tarot offer a true black hole, one that is warm, welcoming, and transformative. The tarot are a plectrum with which 1,000 notes can be strummed. They take you deeper than your prescribed self, further even than your divine feminine. They open a rainbow of self that abides in all that is, from the dirty and downtrodden to the sacred and succinct. The tarot reflects every prismatic shade, tone, and color your life might hold. They show you what you know. They show you what you have hidden from. Tarot only influence your life in that they drag your attention towards what matters, and then the tune changes. I love your writing, Alice.
You know what? I'm really proud of myself just listening to this. It's quite good, isn't it?
You know, I've read a fair amount on tarot, and just your voice is so distinctive and so welcoming and rebellious and vibrant, and just, yeah, it just is unique to anything else I've read on tarot. And that's why I said yes, because I was a bit scared, you know, Womancraft, are we going to get, because I'd mentioned tarot cards in my book Moontime, and I've got a couple of fundamentalist Christian American people writing horrific reviews saying, you know, this is the work of the devil. She mentions those cards. I liked her book until she mentioned that. But so I was aware of what the potential kickback could be. So for us as a business decision to take on a tarot book was walking a tightrope, and I was a little bit scared, but I knew that if anyone could do a tarot book that we could put out proudly and no one could say this is the devil's work, it was Alice.
Oh, thank you. Do you know what? I think I'm quite protected because I have yet to meet any fundamentalist Christians who want to, you know, kind of destroy me yet. And I think that's really weird.
That is really weird.
And I have put out into the world. I feel like there's some kind of golden orb around me at the minute. And I do expect it at some point. But
do you want to speak to that perception of tarot as being, because it's called dirty and divine. So there's the hint of that there is divinity and there is something else, and tarot includes both of them. But there is, in many circles, a fear of tarot, a fear that it is the work of the devil. It is witchcraft in its nastiest form.
Yes, I would like to speak to that, actually. I'm so sorry. My daughter has just sent me a request on my computer. It's very distracting. I told them, don't bother, mummy. Right. Yeah, no, I have a very strong opinion about that. And my opinion on that has grown over the last few years. And in particular, I think that what we're looking at is the thing that we're all really familiar with, which is misogyny and racism. Basically, in a nutshell, women are always the ones who have used tarot as a divination tool. Generally, I know men do too, but it was particularly Romany women as an oppressed group of women of colour, and women who were othered, and women who were sexualized, and women who were demonized, who used those cards to provide for their families, to pay the bills or to pay for food in a time when nobody else would probably give them a job. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. But at the same time, it's that mix up of the kinds of hatred of women, the hatred of women holding and being in charge of anything sacred, and the hatred of women of colour, particularly who were so deeply oppressed and hated almost outright without even that being seen as a bad thing, the Romany women. And I think that those things combined have created a vilification of tarot, which basically is tarot are evil, tarot are bad, tarot are this, tarot are that, and has then played out into lots of, you know, kind of Hollywood films and the cultural perspective of what tarot is. But it's just good old-fashioned misogyny and racism.
I'd never seen that perspective, and now you say it, yep, I can totally see that.
Well, I had a Romany woman reach out to me and kind of asked me about what my reparations were, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. And we got into a conversation, and, you know, part of my reparations now is talking about that fact. And now that I know a little bit, and I only know a little bit about that history, and I honor that because, you know, tarot have paid my bills and paid for my children, and particularly in difficult times, you know, tarot is there as something to lean on, so I can empathize with that. But I can't empathize, or I cannot say that I've experienced, you know, that hatred of racism and things like that. But I've experienced misogyny, so it's all kinds of those things combined. I think it's a beautiful, sad, tragic thing that needs discussing and talking about. And if I'm in a position to kind of insert that little bit of education, then I ought to, really.
Thank you. And so we talked about what tarot isn't. What is tarot for you, and how does it work?
Tarot for me is reflection. You know, I've tried for it to be prediction for a long time when I was younger, particularly in my teens. You know, I think I talk about it in the book in quite a self-deprecating way, in that, you know, I always wanted to know when my next boyfriend was coming or whatever, or how I was going to do at school. I didn't care how I did at school. That was not why I used tarot. I wanted to know when my next boyfriend was coming. So I was always using tarot for prediction. And I think, gosh, having lived through difficult situations and trauma, and probably not having had as stable a family as I needed to, I desperately needed something that kind of explained to me the future. But the more I tried to seek that from tarot, the less that worked. And actually it can be, I think, quite a painful thing to try and seek answers outside of yourself. So as I became older and had my own children, created my own family, I came to realize that tarot were really there to help me explore what's already present. And that is the most powerful tool. And I gave myself permission to look at the cards from my perspective as well. So when you say, how do they work? I think there's a mix up there of imagination, because tarot were traditionally a game. They came from the 14th century. They're not like old as like runes are old. They're not old like the Bible's old. They're just quite recent. But they were a game that people used to use because they didn't have screens, to create poetry and stories. And only wealthy people really could even afford tarot at that time. But I guess somewhere along the lines, this use of imagination, perhaps infused with the imagery upon the cards, which has always been quite sacred, but also quite, you know, mundane, then combined with people's intuitions, began to become meaningful. And this is why I would always say that tarot work for you, giving yourself permission to experience and explore your own meanings for each card. You know, you can use the book and get a bit of a catalyst or a bit of a diving off point, but generally the meanings are best served by your own life experience.
So that was something I was going to ask you, so I'll pop that question in now, which is, so you're saying use your own experience with the cards, and I can see how that works for the major arcana, because, you know, they're each kind of an archetypal image. You know, we know what we associate with that the hanging man or the empress or the sun or the wheel, you know, all of those, we understand what they are. But for the minor, it's trickier because there's an awful lot of cards, which to me it's always felt like that's an awful lot of learning that you've got to do of the meanings of every single one of these, which, you know, the Seven of Pentacles to me means absolutely nothing. Obviously, if there's artwork on a card that I personally respond to, then I can engage with that. But otherwise, if it's one of the more traditional looking things where it's literally just a picture of 7 coins, then, you know, so how do you approach, or how did you approach learning the meanings?
Well, firstly, you need to get a deck that you can relate to. So you've just mentioned 2 different types of deck. If you've got a deck there that's just got 7 coins on, that's not it's not going to serve you. I've got decks like that and they don't serve me. I need to have illustrated imagery. And I also have different decks with different imagery for the same card, and I allow that meaning to shift across those cards depending on how I feel when I look at it and what intuitively arises. The other thing is, and this is what I say to my daughters, because children are very good at sort of using their imagination to explore things, is I just say, what's the story on the card? Like, if you are stuck and you're looking at it and it's illustrative and you like the images, then can you just figure out a story as if it's like a comic book? And what is this particular slide of the comic book saying? And if you're still stuck, you pick up the book and kind of have a look at generic meanings or Google it or something, but then still allow yourself to jump off into, you know, kind of exploration with it. The other thing I found over the years is tarot's not always best served in like aloneness. I think some of the best times and most interesting times I have with tarot is when I'm with a group of women, and I've over the past year, since I have worked solely for myself doing tarot, and I've done loads and loads and loads of workshops, and I'll sit in front of a room of, 20, 30, 40 women, none of whom have picked up a deck of cards ever in their life. And I will give them permission to talk about the cards, to look at them as if they're a story, and to talk to one another about it. And so for the first 5 minutes, they're all a bit quiet and they don't really know what they're doing. But honestly, after that, I might as well leave the room, because they're all away and they're coming up with incredible interpretations because they've been given permission to access that imagination, that intuitive knowing. And it's just there, I think, for everyone. So I think sometimes, doing it in your bedroom or in your kitchen at night by yourself is not always conducive. And actually, it's really good to do it in a group of like-minded people, and to have that back and forth and the exploration, and just keep, the thing is as well, you're never going to learn all 78 cards that quickly. It's taken me 30 years and there's still some cards I struggle with. And on certain days, struggle with more, or certain spreads that come out and I'm a bit like, oh, I'll think about this for a minute. But it's being patient and kind of working with it and allowing your life experiences over time to kind of add to the card's meaning in your own little personal dictionary.
And this is a totally personal question, but I'm curious. Some people use reversed cards, meaning the negative meaning of whatever the card's normal message is. Do you do that?
No, I can't be bothered. Honestly, it's like, why? There's enough meaning there. I did think about it. I think maybe when I first started in my teens, I might have given it a go, but I just kind of came to the conclusion that there's 78 cards here, and there's enough within those cards that the right cards are going to come out to give me the answer, whether I don't need to reverse it. So I don't ever use reverse cards, and it's never, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I think that if you do, you might be, if you're approaching tarot in a more kind of bookish manner, like you're memorizing the exact meanings, then that's going to give you a whole another 78 load of meanings. But because I read it intuitively and imaginatively, I just don't feel like I need that.
And do you feel, because I guess one of the reasons why tarot gets a bad rap is that it's used as a form of divination, which is foretelling the future, which we shouldn't do because God's in charge of the future, if that's your perspective, but also that it's somehow kind of linking in with the spirit world, the other worlds, the unseen, that you are being, you're hearing voices, or you're being prompted by something other than the divine in patriarchal terms. Do you get a sense that you are guided by anything when you read tarot, or do you feel it is just you, Alice, doing it?
I do think I'm guided by something, but I haven't explored too deeply what it is. I mean, I've sat in circles, I've done mediumship courses and all of that kind of thing, but I don't bring mediumship into tarot. And it's interesting because I've actually been talking about this a lot this week with my agent and with the artist who did the Rebel Heart Tarot cards with me, because my perspective is there is no evil, well, no, I think there probably is some darker forces out there, but I choose to be protected from them, a bit like I choose to not have fundamental Christians show up in my inbox, and they don't so far. The force is strong. I don't know. I think I had some spooky experiences as a child, and I just decided I'm not prepared to, be with that energy anymore. So any readings I'm doing, I just trust that I'm protected and heightened. And I do feel like when I start doing a reading, whatever mood I come to the reading in, whatever's going on in my life, like a channel opens up and I am clear and I am there, and it is poignant. And then I can switch off and go back to my life. And I believe that channel is the divine, it's the sacred, it's something that we're all connected to, and it's beautiful. And if I felt for a second that it was something ickier, then I would, do the work to shut that down. And I do think, the other thing I would say about that is I think when you're first using tarot, you can be more susceptible to all kinds of energy wanting to find its way to you. So I think it's really important to be careful and to ground yourself and to set up protection that is ongoing as well. Because I feel like I don't protect myself every time. It's just like I have a deal. with the divine, that I'm doing this all the time. So can I just be constantly protected? And I feel that I am, but, you know, I do, you know, there is something, but, you know, I would say that tarot is a tool. We've all seen The Exorcist, and we know what happens with like a crucifix.
God, I haven't, I couldn't.
Well, it's not pleasant, right? What happens with a crucifix in that? So, you know, you can have a hammer and you can build a house, or you can beat someone up with it. You know, there's a really pure intention that's beautiful, and there's something ugly and nasty. And I'm sure that all tools can be used for all things. So you just, it's how your intentions as you use them.
And do you use any other form of divination?
I use oracle cards a lot. I love my oracle cards. What else? Do you know what? I feel like, no, I don't. I feel like the main form of divination I use, perhaps even more than tarot these days, is going for a walk with my dog and just seeing what comes, and being really alert to signs in my life, which can show up in everything and anything. And I feel like, having done tarot for 30 years, I am now like, I read everything. So I'll have experiences with, I don't know, birds, and I find 4-leaf clovers all the time. I'm never looking for them, they just spring to my eyesight. You know, just lots, and obviously the numbers as well. A lot of people have that, don't they? The 111s and the 222s, and interestingly behaving animals. That to me, that's my new kind of divination. It's just, it's constant reassurance and direction. So I feel like that's how I work more with spirit these days, for myself in particular.
Fabulous. Sorry, I'm just looking at my questions because they've totally gone out of my... Oh yes, the title of the book. Why did you pick it?
Now I have to go back in my memory. I don't know, but I remember you really liked it. I think it's because, I think it's something to do with that whole bad girl, good girl dichotomy, and actually tarot exploring just everything that we are, but taking it from that dirty, gritty, so not bad girl, gritty, earthy, real kinds of compost, to something higher than we're allowed to be as women, that is higher than just a good girl, the divine, like this whole spectrum of femininity, that I think the tarot allows us to explore.
And how was the process of writing it? Because it was a very personal book. I mean, like, the people often, I think, probably pick it up expecting it to just be a kind of a how-to manual on tarot, and actually kind of discover that it's also a memoir. So how was it to write that personally?
Hard, and it's hard to read it back. It's really raw and vulnerable. I think I needed it to be, though, because I was in a raw and vulnerable place. So I needed to be honest, and I needed the cards to be reflected in the truth of life. And because I am a writer, I'm a bit up for talking about my private stuff in a way that maybe other people might not be. And I'm not too fussed, but it's hard. And I look back on it, and I don't know. I enjoyed writing it, though. That's the thing. And it felt like a mission. That was it. I was on a mission. I was on a quest. It had to be done. It was an important part of my life's work, not for my writing career, for my writing career. I feel like it really kind of lifted me and elevated me up. So thank you for that. But it also was for me, for my life. And so there's no regrets there. It's a beautiful, slightly cringy version, kind of account of what was going on at that point in time.
And what gave you the idea to do a card a day? Had you seen it somewhere before, or was this a kind of what motivated you or inspired you?
I think I just wanted to get to know the cards better. I've never read a book on tarot. I don't know if I should admit that. I've just literally completely self-taught, apart from maybe diving into the books that came with any deck I had. But like, my first deck was Astro Tarot by Russell Grant. I love that deck. So it's kind of fun and floaty and light. And I have books on tarot. I can look up there and there's books on tarot. I've not read them. And I found them really dry, really dry. So, I won't name any because probably people love some of these books, but I just couldn't get into them. And so partly it was the wanting to do the quest for myself, to sit with every card, to get to know it for my own kinds of information. I'm so glad I did, because as a result, every time I work through the tarot in a book or creating a deck, I know them better. So I'm honing my expertise and kind of taking accountability there. But also I just thought, well, I can write something that's more fun and more accessible and more real. So, and that's, you know, with my previous books, they're all based around my life and my experiences. And part of me is think, well, I can't get that wrong, particularly. I might these days, but you know, I don't know. But I feel like if I'm talking from my experience and I'm being honest and open, that can serve people and it can serve me. So I guess that's why I did it.
Thank you. Do you want to, I've got two competing things in my brain, so I'm going to say them both so I don't forget them. I would love for you to read something from the book, but I would also love, perhaps whilst people are listening, if you like doing something whilst you're listening, if people would like to share in the chat their favorite tarot decks or oracle cards, so that we can kind of pool the knowledge, and I will attempt to pull it from there, and so I can email it out to everybody. I won't put your names in, just the decks that are suggested, because I meant to bring, I'm down in the office, I meant to bring some of my decks with me to show you, but I've got a couple that I would love to recommend. So do in the chat, just put any that you highly recommend and would love to share with other people. And Alice, would you like to read to us?
Yes, I was just putting mine in too, though. Just one more. My favorite that I can think of off the top of my head. Right, yes, I will read to you all while you type away. So I feel quite vulnerable reading this, because I did choose a part of this book that is a really vulnerable part, but the reason I'm doing that is because I am actually trying to be more vulnerable in my life, and also because the book is vulnerable. And so if I was to go and hide and read some sort of non-meaningful section, then I'd probably feel like I was cheating you all and myself. So I'm going to read the part of the star section. So starting from the meaning through to my journey. Okay, the star is a celestial entity, effectively, and as far as we understand, stars are genderless, yet her image in tarot is always female. She's posted in the nude and she's lifting water from one place to another. She's transforming and turning the world around her. She does so in her nude state as a statement of truth. As women born of the modern patriarchy, we've been stripped down to nothing but the physical, the nude. Yet this nude, the star's nude, is not one that is for the consumption of the eye. It is the naked soul, the revealed, bare, truly open self. For us women of the dirty and divine, her message is simple. In your honest to goodness self, in your flesh, in your embarrassment, in your humility, that, my shining stars, is where you find your power. So then onto my journey. Life's not worth a damn, so you can shout out, I am what I am. These words have been singing around my head since the day of the star began. I didn't recognize their significance until just now, so I rushed to my computer to see what card I was on, and perfectly, succinctly, wonderfully, it is the star. But what I had hoped would be a day full of starlight, sparkle, and shimmering loveliness has warped into something raw and dark. Raw like a fucking sliced open pig, steaming and unbandaged, festering in the heat. Yesterday I was the tower, strong for another, strong so that I did not make the immediate situation worse. That worked. It allowed for the day to go by unsullied, but as the day passed, my husband's mood darkened and he finished it sleeping on the sofa. We didn't argue, we barely spoke. His depression descended like a ghostly funk, while I played happy families upstairs, playing, laughing with my children, washing them, feeding them, putting them to bed, ignoring the gloom emanating from the living room. I don't want to talk about depression. I could, but that's not my thing, it's his. My thing is being privy to this time and time again, privy to the weeks of heartfelt, loving wonderfulness, privy to the decline to something morose and haunting, privy to his anger at the past, privy to my displays of solidarity, my aching longing for a simpler, steady life, privy to my hope for something less ordinary. I have a habit of living in the moment, something which is, of course, wonderfully worthy, but it doesn't feel worthy when living in the moment makes you forget the shit that went before, and then it rears its head again, and before I know it, we are back at square one. And this has been going on for years, since the beginning when our relationship was conceived in an ecstatic vodka fog, 14 years of varying tolerance and attempted treatment of his depression. 14 years trying to get out from under something that in the first place was part of the fun. My naked self has become covered in all that he brought to me, as is the case for so many people. And whilst much of it has been wonderful, there is still the remnants of those early constellations playing in and around us, guiding us wrongly, backwards and sideways, and never quite as forward as I would like. I have yet to fully step into my naked raw truth. Perhaps this journey is the stripping salve I need. So here is my most honest truth. I say I'm coping, that I'm strong, but the other woman inside does not want to be in this situation anymore. One way or another, the cycle is exhausting. I'm not very good at coping with this, not very good at all. I declare I'm a tower of strength, but apparently that tower is built on sand because as soon as it is challenged, I crumble. It's not an obvious thing. The crumbling is very much internal. I smile, I look the same. I run through my day as per normal. Inside, I am a steaming turd full of resentment and venom. I can run a whole gamut of emotions in the face of his depression. I act strong, I am strong, until suddenly I'm not, and I'm bubbling with a million solutions. He might not fix overnight, so then I take it personally, which is when I think of separation and divorce, as if cutting out this wound would extricate me from having to deal with all of this. Then I come round, and I'm all divine and loving, intermittent with misunderstanding and lack of understanding, and then back to smiling for the kids. And that is that bit.
Oh, how does that feel to read that?
Intense.
Oh.
Because we've been on a healing journey since then, but it's still there, you know. I said to you, I read this section to my friend today to get her opinion. She was like, yes, you should definitely read that. But and we have, with so much has happened as a result of this book and what it brought to the surface, and him recognizing a lot of things, his addiction, he has ADHD, all these things that have since kind of come into focus and have been treated, but it's still there at the same time. So there's healing that has occurred and continually occurring, but at the same time is still kind of present in some respects. So reading that it feels, I don't know, it doesn't feel bad though. It feels like, okay, I'm still here. This is good. This is love. This is family life. This is harder than I thought it would be some days. But, you know, I have tools. Some people don't. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to invite people, if you have a question, to unmute yourself and ask Alice. There's no pressure, but I just do want to give you this opportunity if you've come to this with a burning question. Looks like we're good. Alice, I would ask you if you would like to do something with the cards with us here. I'm not sure what form that will take, but now would be a good chance to do that then.
Okay, well, how's about, because there are a number of people here and potentially, oh, has Karina got a question?
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say that I really love your book and how brave you are and how you make, we did your story, you make tarot like a real tool for the daily life. And I went through a situation like you went, and the way, the honesty you had to look at yourself. And I think the cards help you in some way, but it's a great book, and thank you for writing it.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate that, because it was a scary one to put out into the world. And it's good to know it sort of stands the test of time, because it's been around a while now. Thank you, Karina. So what I thought I'd do is, if we probably do have time, don't we, Lucy? If I do
yeah, we've got 20 minutes.
Oh, fab, right. Okay, so if I take 3 cards, but can we maybe all as a group, so whether people are here live or watching this back later, it doesn't really matter, but I thought it'd be nice if we just as a collective, as a circle of women, take some breaths together, just to get us into a lovely place. Then I will shuffle the cards and we'll take it from there, and I'll probably choose a few and people can identify. In fact, whilst we're breathing, maybe think whether you are pulled to 1, 2, or 3. So 3 lovely deep breaths. So in through the nose, out through the mouth, and just imagine yourself dropping into your imagination and your inner self. Okay, so just continuing to breathe nicely, deeply for as many breaths while I just have a shuffle. Centering yourself, your feelings, how you feel. Trying to drop out any, how you think or feel about anybody else, because that's a big part, I think, of the tarot journey. Is sometimes we come to tarot because we want to know about how other people are, or how other people see us, or what other people are going to do. But what we're looking at here is us. What is our truth? What is our centered place? What do we need to understand and know right now for us, not for our relationships or other people? So I'm using Rebel Heart Tarot, and I'm going to choose 3 cards. So if you choose your card, 1, 2, or 3, or some of you might want to choose like a couple. So hopefully everybody will get a fairly unique reading.
Do you have a special way of shuffling?
No.
Do you cut them?
I just literally, I didn't learn any tricks. I really regret not having learned the kind of riffle shuffle thing. But I think I'm too old to an old dog now. I can't do that one. So I just literally do this. And this, honestly, this impresses people. So many women, I think, like, our hands are smaller, and I have a lot of women get really quite stressed about shuffling cards, and to the fact that sometimes it's a barrier to them using the cards. So I just say it doesn't matter, just put them around and whirl them around on the floor, or just pull out a straight line and then choose your card. You don't need to be able to shuffle. I just do this till I feel.
Because that's something definitely, when you start out learning tarot, like if you follow the instruction books, you've got to kind of purify them in some sort of way, and then you've got to protect them, wrapping them in something and only keeping them in a certain place, and then you've got to cut them twice before you like there's a lot of rules.
Yeah, it's all lovely. I think people like ritual. I don't do it. I'm not that fussy. I'm not a fussy. I'm just like a kind of let's just get into it and do it kind of person, and I'm not very good with the, I'd like to say that I even keep them in the box, but I don't even do that sometimes. Like I'm a bit careless and a bit, and it's never affected my practice. I think there's a lot of myths built up around tarot that make it difficult to do. I also think some of those are beautiful and they make it feel sacred. So do whatever feels right to you. Like I always shuffle and then I always cut and then I have to tap. That's just my thing. That is now what I do.
And what's the tapping for you? What's that?
Feels like, okay, that's the one I've chose. It just feels parted. I don't know, just like it.
And do you pull them from the top, or do you kind of cut the deck? And
so I've already cut it. So now I'll just take 3 and I'll put them all the right way up, because like I say, I don't do reversals. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing reversals. I don't, I'm very like liberated when it comes to tarot, and I expect everybody else to be really liberated. So, kind of do what feels good, wrap your tarot cards in silk and leave them under the moon, or just stick them in the kitchen drawer, whichever, kind of works. Read reversals, don't read reversals. You have to find your unique way. And until you do, you're going to find reading cards hard, because there's just barrier after barrier after barrier. I did read somewhere that old wives' tale about tarot cards not being able to buy your own deck, that came about in the 60s and 70s, when there was like a renaissance of spirituality and women were picking up tarot cards, and people didn't like that. So it's almost like another barrier, another boundary was put in place to kind of prevent women from having that access to the sacred.
It's interesting that you bring that up, actually, because back in the 70s, there was a law in the US which made reading tarot cards illegal to do it professionally. And Zed Budapest, one of the kind of founding witches of the last generation, actually took this all the way through the court system and challenged it, and the law was actually changed because she was arrested for reading tarot cards because it was illegal, and she got the law changed, and tarot and witchcraft seen as religious entities which can't be persecuted, which is a really interesting kind of.
Well, I love that. I didn't know that. More power to her. Fantastic. Thank you to her. I mean, we're in the UK, so it doesn't make any difference to me, but for our American sisters, thank goddess for that. Okay. All right, so I've chosen 3 cards, so have a little think about which your card was. I'm going to go through each one, and hopefully it will build a picture for each individual. So the first card, if you chose card number 1, we have the 6 of Swords. So this deck is a collage based deck by Nikki, and her art is just, well, I just love it, but it's very easy to interpret. And this is what I always say, if you're going to get a deck that you connect to with the artistry, otherwise you're just barking up the wrong tree constantly. So the 6 of Swords is really popular card at the moment. It seems since January, this card comes up in nearly all my readings. We're all in this in-between space. So we're on this boat. We've got all our belongings around us. We may not be feeling at our happiest self. So if this card has come up, you might be feeling slightly lost. You're certainly not where you were in the past, and you're not where you're headed either. And in fact, where you're headed might seem quite elusive and uncertain.
That's my January to a T.
Yeah. That's mine too. And actually, this you might feel like you have no oars. You've got swords in your boat, but they're just going to cut through the water. They're not really going to get you anywhere. But what they do is cut through some stuff. So when I come to the cords, it's like, what are we cutting through? What are we releasing? Because the swords, people hate the swords because they are dark and they're difficult, and you do have to cut stuff away. But there's so much power in that. So whilst you're in your boat in the middle of a lake, not knowing where you're going and not being able to go backwards, you have this opportunity to really just be right here. And some of the work that needs to be done in this boat, in this 6 of Swords, is that inner work of cutting stuff away, thinking what is toxic, what is no longer serving, what behaviors are you living with in yourself that are not good, that are not helpful, and what can you do to kind of study and become a better version of yourself, so that when you are guided forward, which there is this, the divine guide kind of element to this card, because there is a light up in the corner, that there is something there that you're moving towards, that you're feeling gently pushed towards, that when you get there, you're in the best place that you can possibly be. So it can feel like a moment of real uncertainty and kind of uncommitment to everything, but at the same time, there is one thing that you can be committed to, and that's yourself. So what work do you need to do on yourself right now to power up and supercharge, and when you get to that future point, be in a really good place to embrace it? So that if you chose card 1, that's what I'd say that meaning is. The second card, if you chose number 2, is the Page of Wands. So we have this lovely character with all her books, a big pink-headed cloud, and all these books in the background. The wands are very creative. They talk about that creative inner fire that gets us places in the world, the ideas that we follow, the inspirations that we have. And with the Page of Wands, to me, it's beginning to put those creative inclinations into some kind of action. So it's learning. In particular, that it's learning or doing something with our inspirations that is practical. Whereas, so it's not just pie in the sky. She has this beautiful pink head full of dreams, but she's also got the foundation. She's got the books in her hand. She's got the pen to her side. She's taking herself to a place of learning. And that learning can be actual physical studentry, and doing an actual course, or it can also be, teaching yourself stuff, buying that book on astrology, or buying that book on tarot, or, whatever it is, and making sure that you are feeding the inspiration appropriately. And it could be other kinds of learning as well, like learning about what you will tolerate, learning about who you are, learning about how you're going to grow as a person, all of those kind of things. But this would be suggesting that what is best for you people who chose number 2 is to put yourself in a place of learning and personal growth. So they're actually quite similar in some respects. This one feels a bit more capable, like she's in a better position to actually go out and learn, whereas this one, it's a lot more internal, kind of doing that inner work, the personal therapy and kind of, I guess, self-growth, but kind of different, similar themes. Then we have the Ace of Wands. So they're all very January cards, actually. They're all very kind of, we're not in any certain place. We're in a place of growth. We're in a place of change. So the Ace of Wands in this card is a pencil, a rubber, and an eraser, and a pencil sharpener. And it's putting the power back to you. What can you begin right now? What new start are you embracing? Again, because it's Wands, is creative. What fire is burning to be expressed through you? And I'm sure everybody in this group is, you know, kind of a creative female. So what is it that you can start that you've been putting off, you know, or, you know, pick back up that you put down a while ago, and begin to really explore and accept ownership for as being yours to do something with? Because we get distracted, don't we, when we start something and we put it down and then we just assume it's not really ours, or we feel that imposter syndrome. But this is, no, the pencil's in your hand, as is the rubber, and you can just get going. And if you make mistakes, you rub it out and start again. So if you chose card number 3, you are definitely being encouraged to start some creative project that's going to light you up and inspire you, and that you will have control over. If you nurture, it can go to really great places. So hopefully that was kind of help. Each card is appropriate to the people who chose them.
Thank you, Alice. Does anybody have anything they want to feed back from that experience of picking the card or the meaning that was given? Yes.
Thanks. Hi. Yeah, I chose number 3 card actually, and for me that was absolutely perfect, because actually last year was more of those sort of swordy cards for me, and it was a really difficult time, and I kind of saw it a bit like being the 4 and 5 of cups. It was that kind of swordy cuppy kind of thing where you're not, you've got to look forward, but you haven't let go of what was behind you. And anyway, I have got myself together, and I have just launched a course now. And in fact, it's coming first. Its first meetup is on Saturday.
Oh,
so
well done.
it's kind of like I have literally just done it, and it's just, you know, the subscriptions are in, and that's it. And that's like the perfect card for me. So thank you so much. Thank you. That's perfect.
I'm so glad. Some nice comments in the comments too. Emma is a colour pencil artist, so that's like I love it when the tarot are literal, which they can be sometimes. Most often they're metaphorical, but sometimes they're just dead on literal, and it's amazing.
Well, I picked up my pencil today, my iPad pencil, and have literally spent 5 hours today drawing illustrations for my next book after weeks of not being able to work because of migraines. And so that was the one I chose, and it was very literal. So really appreciated that. So thank you so much for joining us, Alice. It has been an absolute pleasure. This is Dirty and Divine. If you've enjoyed it, please do recommend it to friends, share a picture on Instagram or Facebook, review it on Amazon or Goodreads. It really is, you know, it helps to have people who love things sharing it with their people. Just a little kind of bookishness. This was born yesterday, Enchanted Journeys by Sarah Robinson, author of Yoga for Witches and Kitchen Witch. And this is a book of what she calls story journeys. They're guided meditations, so really helpful to use for if you lead any classes or workshops, if you're a yoga teacher, if you do meditation classes. Really beautiful, magical, gentle meditations there, which are very special. And The next book club is going to be the 16th, Thursday, the 16th of March, and it is Mother in the Mother by Pippa Grace. And this is a very special book about mothers reflecting on both the experience of being mothered and the experience of being a mother. And it came about through some workshops that she ran with mothers and daughters from all different backgrounds, all different experiences, positive and negative and ambiguous, of the maternal relationship, both ways, being mothered and being a mother, and how often having children can change our experience of what our mothers were like. I'm saying this looking directly at my own mother. And so that's a very special one, and we have scheduled it for then because it's around the time of Mothering Sunday in the UK. So it is going to be a mother-based book group. So Pippa she's been popping in and out, but she has been here, and she's based in Bristol, so it'll be lovely to have her there. So thank you all very much for your time and your energy and your contributions. We will send out a recording of this, and it will also be on our snazzy new Womancraft Publishing YouTube channel, don't you know? And I will do my best to copy and paste all the recommendations for tarot and oracle card decks and get Lee to send them out to you tomorrow along with the recording, just so that you've got them there for reference. So thank you very much, and have a lovely rest of your evening. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.